Today, I'll be installing the newly released Prinsu Pro Roof Rack on the 4Runner. I'll explain the difference between the Pro Rack and the original rack. I'll show you how to remove the factory rails, the best way to set up all the different parts in preparation for this install, and the easiest way to install this rack by yourself. Stick around. The first thing we're going to do here is just remove the factory rails. I'm using plastic trim tools that I have in my toolbox just to get these caps off. They're quite easy to get underneath and pop off, and once you have them off, you're going to notice 2 bolts. Zip those bolts off, repeat the same process 3 more times, and those roof rails will pull right off, quite easily actually. The one thing you have to pay attention to is you're going to notice a lot of dust and dirt underneath the rails, specifically where those mounting feet for the new rack will go. Make sure that those surfaces are thoroughly clean before putting those new brackets in. It is imperative you do that to have a good seal and get no water leakage. The next step is to find a nice flat surface that's big enough to accommodate all the roof rack parts and lay the rack out in the order in which it's going to be installed. Before I get into the order of the roof rack layout, I just wanted to explain some of the differences between this rack, which is the Prinsu Pro, versus the original Prinsu roof rack. One of the new features on the Prinsu Pro is the rail system. It actually is a double layer rail system. The outermost rail now has a 90-degree bend in it. It's great for rigidity. It also does add additional mounting points. The second part to that rail system is the inner rail. That actually comes in 2 pieces, and it sits and is sandwiched in between with the crossbars. Once those inner rails are in place, they actually have notches or cutouts, and that's exactly where the mounting feet will go. The crossbars themselves have been redesigned. They are now 44% stronger than the original crossbars. In addition, they do provide 9 crossbars, and I found that to be actually many more than I needed, so I did have extra when I mounted the system. With these 2 changes alone, the roof rack now has a static load limit of 1,200 pounds and a dynamic weight limit of 700 pounds. This turns out to be quite a bit more than the original roof rack. Some of the other features of the Prinsu Pro are the mounting hardware. Those are all now stainless steel, which they were not previously. The mounting feet are a little bit different. Before they were incorporated into the side rails, now they are separate, and this allows for the roof rack to sit a little bit closer to the roof line. It also allows for a little bit more adjustability during the install. On the driver's side, if I lay these inserts in side rails, we have those cutouts, and the first bracket, which will be in the front, will have the raw aluminum. That'll sit there. That'll support the front part of the bracket. This is a no-drill install. So the middle bracket on the driver's side, that's going to be number 1. So the number 2 bracket will be on the driver's side, and that'll be the rear, and that'll sit right here at the back of the rack in that little notch. This is the air deflector and the front part of the roof rack. Now there's 3 options that they offer on the website. You can choose one of 3. I actually chose a cutout, and that's actually made for a 40-inch light bar that goes across. You have a choice of the LP4 lights if you have the round or want the round lights. I don't have the light bar yet, but I do plan on ordering it. So this is going to be just fine for now. The deflector will have the round cutouts for the LP4 lights. And if you don't plan on putting any lights or don't want any lights, you can actually get a full piece across without the cutouts. This silver piece, that'll be the backing for the deflector, and that actually will get mounted right on top. And then it'll be flipped up and bolted into the side rails from the side right here. So most people will actually assemble this rack on the floor or on a bench, and then they'll have 2 people and they'll take it up and put it on top of the vehicle. We're going to do it a little different today. We're actually going to take our feet and we're going to mount our feet first on the rails. After that's mounted, we're going to take each side and we're going to mount them to the feet. Once those are mounted up onto the feet, we're going to take the cross rails and we're going to install just a few. I'm not sure how many we're going to use, but we can always add more as we need it. In one of the hardware packs, they actually provide Loctite. Loctite will go on all bolt threads. In addition, they also provide the black RTV silicone sealant. These will go on the bracket bolts. I'm not going to put the Loctite on any bolts just yet. I'm going to put everything together on top of the roof. I'm going to keep the bolts just finger tight or slightly loose, And when I have everything in position, I will start to take all the bolts out and Loctite them as we go. Let's head over to the vehicle. So we're on the passenger side of the vehicle and I have a box with all my parts for the passenger side. I'm going to be installing the number 4 bracket. It says number 4 here. And this is the back of the 4Runner. So you have 2 rubber washers and 2 spacers. It is not required to put RTV here, but I don't like the way this surface sits. It's a little bit uneven. So what I'm going to do is just going to take a little RTV. On the bottom of the washer. Then the washer will go around that little white piece from the factory. Once I have this RTV silicone on the washer, I'll put it down. Then the spacer will go on. I'll just press it down to make sure it seats right. I'm not putting a lot at all, it's just a little bit. That'll go over the white piece. Make sure it sits nicely. Take the spacer. Make sure it's set. The washers go on the bolts. And then the bolts will go in. Once we have this roof rack set up the way it's supposed to be, I'm going to take one out. I'm going to squeeze the silicone in the hole, and then I'm going to put the bolt in correctly. I backed it out a little bit so we have a lot of room for adjustment here. We're going to install the number 3 bracket, which is the middle bracket for the passenger side. We have the 4 brackets on the 4Runner. There are 6 brackets total, so the front brackets I still need to put on. We'll wait for that. This is the driver's side rail, and I'm going to go mount it up. I did put 2 rags, one in the front and one in the back so I don't scratch the paint. I'm going to line it up with these 2 holes here for this bracket. Driver's side rail is on. I have everything just snug. So I have a lot of adjustment side to side, up and down. All I'm going to do here is just take the outside passenger side rail, bring it on over, and repeat the same process on this side that I just did on the driver's side. Once you have both the driver's side and the passenger side rails installed, this is what it should look like. And then we'll move on to our next step, which is installing just a few of the crossbars to provide some stability before we add the front air deflector and the rear support. All right, I have my crossbar sitting right here. What I'm going to do first is install this. This piece is going to sit for the notch out on the bracket that's behind here, and then these 2 bolts will line up with the crossbar. So when I put the crossbar on, I'm going to take 2 bolts. Alright, so this is just loose on one side. I'm gonna go tighten the other side up right now. Passenger side, side rail insert. Just gonna make sure everything lines up right here. All the holes will actually line up. Alright, so I have one crossbar on. You can see that the holes will line up for another crossbar right here. And then actually right here is where the deflector will go, and these bolt holes line up. Show you what we have here. So we have all the inserts in on the side rails, the front one and the back one on both sides. And we have two crossbars in. Everything is still kind of just snug, but we're able to move anything we need to move. So you can see the insert right here. We're gonna go ahead and put that air dam on now. Once we have that front air dam on and the rear on right here, we're gonna start taking all these bolts out one by one. We're gonna Loctite them up, and then we'll get that RTV silicone up in these brackets right here. I'm gonna put the washers on the short bolts. These are also Allen heads. Now we're gonna need these T-nuts right here that are gonna slip inside the support for the air deflector. We're gonna need 2, 4, 6, and 8. So what we're gonna do is slide these in. 4 on each side, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. We're gonna take these and slide them over and line them up with the holes over here. So we'll get them in an approximate location right now just by eye. Just tube to the outside. We'll lay this on top and just take a look, see how they line up. And then we can play with the T-nuts. They'll sit flush from side to side on the deflector. So these are pretty close. I can see that these need to come a little bit further. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the front air dam on, and before we do that, we're gonna line it with the rubber weather stripping. This is not 100% fitted correctly, so we're gonna go ahead and use wire cutters. There is metal inside here, that's why you need wire cutters. Scissors aren't gonna cut it, if you will. Now we have these last brackets that goes for the front, and that has a double-sided tape. This is why it's a no-drill rack, is it goes into the factory location, and then these provide stability for the front bracket. We'll go up to these two holes right here, and they'll line up. But what you have to do is line it up. Then you have to mark the weather stripping that's underneath, and then cut it out so it sits nice and low and flush. Two pieces of the 3M tape, two on each one. All right, so we're back. We got the rack on. Now we're gonna start tightening all the bolts, but first we're gonna get the bracket situated. I'm gonna use the RTV black silicone. I'm gonna squirt it down, pretty much injecting it into the hole. I have it in both holes. Oh my God. Be careful not to over tighten these, just go back and forth to each one. Make sure that they're nice and snug. All right, do the back one, then the other two, and then we're pretty much set. Then we can mount the crossbars and the back support. The back support is just another crossbar, but take note that it's going to be mounted on its side. So those slots will actually be facing the rear of the vehicle. That allows some good mounting options for lights and other accessories. The best way to install this, as well as the additional crossbars, is to go to the mounting feet on the side rails, those two bolts that hold them in, and just simply loosen them up. That'll allow you a little bit more room to slide those rails in. Once you have those cross rails in place and exactly where you want them, now is the time to go back and to lock tight all those bolts. If you're building this roof rack on a surface before mounting it on the roof, I don't really understand how it's possible to know exactly where you want your crossbars until it's on the roof and you start putting your accessories in places. So I think Loctiting the bolts before you have those crossbars on the roof and know exactly where you want them might be a little premature. As always, I truly appreciate you watching. Hopefully some found this useful. Hopefully some found it entertaining. Either way, thank you for sticking around. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Any tools or additional information I have, I will always leave in the description below. I have a ton more content coming up, so stick around and I will see you on the next one.